Thank you for having me this evening. I'm going to try to tell my story. I'm going to try. So I am a product of Indianapolis, Indiana. I've lived here all of my life. And I'm going to tell you this right now, and I've never been outside of Indianapolis or outside of the United States. I have been outside of Indiana, but not the United States. I raised my children on the west side of Indianapolis. My first job was on the west side, the old Lafayette Square area. My first job was at Ayers department store. I worked there for about 13 years. And when I started at Ayers, I was hired in the candy department. When I left Ayers, I was a senior buyer for Ayers. I moved on from Ayers and went to work for a department store called Value City Department Store. Value City, again, I worked there 13 years, but I will tell you, when I was at Value City, I started as the department manager, rose up to be the store manager of the department store on the west side of Indianapolis in the Lafayette Square area, and I'm going to keep saying Lafayette Square area. You'll hear it a lot tonight. But while I was at the Value City as the department store manager, and again, I'm going to remind you that I've always lived in Indianapolis, and I lived in Indianapolis when it was mostly just black and white, right? Never thought of myself as a racist. But I remember in about the late 90s that the Latino community were moving into Indy, right? And I was starting to see a lot of them. And again, I never thought of myself as being racist, but I remember these thoughts that used to enter my mind. I just remember when I was at Value City, there was this booth, and if you ever been into the store, there's this like lookout booth that the manager could see over and see everybody, right? And so I'm standing in this lookout booth, and I'm noticing, I'm like, where are these people coming from? Why are they here? You know, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm not saying it to anyone, I'm just thinking it to myself. Then I'm thinking, why are these people short? And why? Why do they have straight hair? Why are they yellow in color? Why do they always come together in groups? I mean, it's all these whys, just why? More importantly, why do they only have $50 bills and $100 bills? Because that seemed to be the norm too. There I might have been a little envious, but hey. So I'm telling you this to tell you because this was the beginning of a journey that God was taking me on. And at the time, of course, I didn't know that, right? So I leave Value City some 13 years later, and I leave there because, and I love the job, but I became a grandmother. And if you're a grandparent, you know that if you worked in the department store, it's not conducive to being a grandparent, right? So I had to leave there. So I went to work for National City Bank, whole new career change. At National City, I know this much, like Paquito, is that the right word, Paquito, in banking. And I was interviewing as an assistant manager because I think if you can manage anybody. And if you like people, you can, you know. And I'm a people person. And I remember after the interview, I'm leaving. The regional manager follows me out to my car, and she said, wait a minute, I can't hire you as an assistant manager. I need you to be the branch manager. So this lady hired me as a branch manager, knowing nothing about banking. As a matter of fact, I called my dad one time when I bounced a check, and I was like, how come you never told me this could happen if I bounced a check, right? Anyway, they hired me. I think she hired me in a branch that it didn't matter to her if it failed because it was like number 24 it was ranked 24 out of 24 out of the 24 branches. It was, by the end of the first year, I had taken that branch with my staff from being number 24 to number 1, and we maintained that for like the 3 years we were there. Thank you. I would tell you this, while I was there, and I am a people person. I love all people. I really, really do. But then I started noticing the Latino community coming into the bank, right? And there they go again, those thoughts. Why are these people here? Why are they short? Why do they come in groups? And da-da-da-da-da. But this one time I said it aloud, and I had a gentleman working for me by the name of Terrence. And Terrence said to me, because he heard me say it, I didn't realize I was saying it, but he heard me and he said, "Who do you think you are? Don't you know they're God's children just like you?" Day one, that when I look back, I know that's the day that God was preparing me for this amazing journey that I'm on. So again, that branch being one of the best branches, I got promoted to a larger branch in the Lafayette Square area, right? This was in the late 90s, going into the 2000s, and now at this new branch I'm at, I get to see people of many different cultures, not just the Latino community, African community, Asian, I mean, you name it, no one looked like me and some of you anymore that came into this branch. So it's really kind of cool. But something else was happening while I was in this branch. This branch was known as one of the largest business branches in the city for National City Bank because it was in the Lafayette Square area. While at that branch, we started noticing, myself and some of the business customers, they would come in, they would say, "You know what? Why are businesses leaving this area?" One of the persons was by the name of Jeb Barton, a really dear friend of mine, used to be an elected official at the state level, loved him to death. And him and I would talk, and he would say, "What can we do?" So we started talking to other business owners, managers in the area, right? And we came up with this organization called the Lafayette Square Area Coalition. We're thinking, okay, we can save this area, we'll invite other businesses to come to the area, not knowing that the immigrant community was starting to move in. But we were successful in bringing that Walmart to the area. So in like 2 weeks, we collected 1,700 petition letters saying, Mr. Walmart, we would like to have you here." 2 years later, Walmart opened their doors. And I can tell you, when they opened their doors, they tell us it was one of the most successful grand openings they ever had. And people kept coming and coming. Now, Walmart came. Let's put that aside. We'll get to the food portion. So while we're looking at Walmart, we look back around and we're saying something special is happening in this area. Our immigrant brothers and sisters are moving into a lot of the empty spaces, right? Because businesses are moving out. And we look up, and on one corner, we had an Ethiopian restaurant, we had a Chinese restaurant, a Japanese restaurant, Greek, Mexican, El Salvadorian, you name it. They were popping up all over the place. And we're thinking, wow, why are we trying to save something that's old and dead, right? Let's embrace what's happening now. And so we did. And I can tell you that we moved forward, we embraced that, we thought, okay, now we have something special here. We need to get the rest of Indy to appreciate what's happening here. So we came up with an event where we can invite people to taste some of the amazing foods that's now in our area. And the event is called the Taste the Difference Festival. I can remember going out to the restaurants and trying to convince them to be a part of this event, right? So I'm going to the restaurants and I'm trying to explain to them that we're trying to have this tasting event to encourage people to come to our area, to sample the food. It'd be in one location where you bring samples for people to taste. And I went to several restaurants and some would say yes, but I got to tell you a story about Nick. Nick owns Mr. Gyros, which is a Greek restaurant in the area. And I went to Nick and I said, "Nick, we're going to have this event to showcase the amazing food that's happening in this area." And Nick said, "Okay, but no." So I left a little discouraged, went and asked a couple of other restaurants if they would participate. Some said yes, some said no, but the ones that said no, they were nice about it. Nick was not nice about it. So I went back to Nick a few days later because I had a couple of wins by people saying yes. So I went back to Nick and I said, "Nick, can I try again and tell you about this event?" And he said again, no. So I left, went and got a few more restaurants that said yes, and I said to myself, you know what? Nick is going to do this. So I went back in there one more time, and he said, lady, what do I have to get you to do? What do I have to do to get you to not come back here and ask me this again? I said, if you give me a really slow yes instead of your really quick no, you'll never have to see me after that event. And so he said, tell me about it again. I told him, he said, okay. And so he came to the event, participated, brought some really, really good gyros. I ate meat then. I don't eat meat now. And everybody was liking his gyros. Well, they liked all the food that was there that evening. But I'll tell you this. Nick found me that evening, and he said, why didn't you tell me this event was going to be like this? I'm like, really? I'm thinking to myself. But at the end, Nick said, I will participate in this event every year. And now 13 years later, Nick is still participating in our event. One of the other events that our goal is to get people to come to our area, right? I will tell you that the New York Times folks have been in our area because they wrote a story about it, said where the world comes to eat. And so we're trying to get people in Indy to discover Indy's international marketplace. So we came up with another event called Savor the International Marketplace, just like Devour Indy. I'm sure many of you have heard of that. So we came up with that event, now understanding that most of our restaurant owners may not understand how we do things here, right? And they're not speaking the language as well either. But we decided we would have a meeting, pull them all together, and we did. Won't bore you with the details of the meeting, but I will tell you this. At the end of the meeting, there were a few of them that stayed behind, some of the owners, and they were talking amongst themselves, and they were talking about how they had to go to Chicago to buy some of their product, whether it's lamb or whatever kind of meats that they're cooking, that they can't find here. And by the end of their conversation, instead of each one going to Chicago by themselves or, separately, they pulled their resources together and started going. One person would go once a month and pull the products together that they all needed. I thought that was pretty cool because that was the beginning of us realizing as a community, if we work together, we can be a better community, right? And that's what, thank you. So, after that, I have lots of stories like that, but I want to leave you with this because there's other storytellers in here tonight. But I want to leave you with this. A couple of things that I've learned and what has grown me is that, one, being a person that have grown up in this city all my life, one thinking that, the only people in the world are black and white people, right? But getting to learn to love on all kinds of people. And I've also learned this, that if we talk to one another, that we can find out that our differences aren't so different. And if we share with one another those foods that we were a little squeamish about, like I grew up on mac and cheese, mashed potatoes, and fried chicken, right? Today, I hardly ever eat macaroni and cheese, mashed potatoes, and I don't eat meat, so fried chicken is out, right? But I can tell you, yesterday, I was in a Chinese restaurant that had their sweet and sour soup, which I love, had these mushrooms that grow on a tree. Oh my gosh, I'm telling you, it's the bomb. Or I can go to a Yemenese restaurant, and they fix this fish that they cut open that kind of looks like the palm of my hand when they finish it. And you were talking about seasonings. I couldn't begin to tell you the seasonings that they put on that fish. But that fish is like when you put it in your mouth. They fix it in a clay oven too, but when you put it in your mouth, close your eyes, it's like you died and went to heaven. Oh my gosh. So I love the area that I'm a part of. I want to leave you with this. My name is Mary. If you haven't been to the International Marketplace area, I'm here to take you on a tour. Thank you.